Welcome to this session on customer value propositions, CVP in business markets. So in this session, we will be learning different types of customer value propositions and comparing the different types and understanding some of the pros and cons of the different value propositions. So the three different types of value propositions or customer value CVPs, I'm going to be using the word CVP, short for customer value propositions. The first is what we call the all benefits CVP. The second is favorable points of difference CVP. And then the third and last is the resonating focus CVP. So let's take a look let's go back. Let me really briefly explain to you what these three different types of CVP are, and then I have some slides later on that will go into greater detail in terms of decomposing the elements of these three different types of value propositions. So all benefits, as the name implies, this is a value proposition where the seller, the company, lists and emphasizes all the benefits that this company can provide to the buyer, the customer. So that's why we call it the all benefits. It's simply listing and communicating all the benefits that this company, the seller believes that the company has, and it's communicating to the buyer. The second one is favorable points of difference. Favorable points of difference is, unlike all benefits, now this is a little more advanced in the sense that we're not just emphasizing the benefits per se, but we are adding a qualifier to that and communicating how our benefits are better than the competition. Okay? So it's going one step further and saying, oh, it's not just the benefits that we can provide, but it's the benefits that we can provide and how those benefits are superior to the competition, to the next best alternative offering. Right? When we say next best alternative offering, we're implying the closest competitor. Okay? So that's the favorable point of difference. We'll get back to this a little bit later, but just at a very broad level. And then the third is resonating focus. This is, again, now even a more advanced version of CVP compared to the former two, in the sense that now we're cherry picking, we are selectively choosing not a laundry list, but very few, maybe, two or three, it could be even one, two or three important benefits that not only provide superior value compared to the competition, but has an impact to the customer's business model. Right? So if you think about it, the benefits have to be superior compared to the competition, but they also have to make a difference to the customers. The customers need to understand that the benefits that the seller is providing need to make an impact, need to make a difference. Right? They just can't be benefits for the sake of benefits, or they can't just be benefits for the sake of being better than the competition if they can't make an impact to the customer's business model. Therefore, the resonating focus is an improvement above and beyond the favorable point of difference, which in turn is an improvement above and beyond the all benefits. So, make a long story short, the gold standard, the ideal CVP should be the resonating focus over the other two. We'll get back to this a little bit later in a few slides. Some key elements in CVP. So this is an important slide in terms of understanding, okay, what are the elements that go into CVP, into constructing a CVP? Well, the first is what we call points of parity, POP. Second, points of difference, POD. The third is points of contention, POC. Right? POP, POD, POC. So what is points of parity? As the name implies, when we use the word parity, it means similarity, same, identical. So a benefit that is a point of parity means that in the eyes of the customer, the seller's benefit is equivalent, is the same as the competitor. In other words, the benefit that a focal company is arguing is basically, in the eyes of the customer, to be equivalent to a competitor. That's why it's called a point of parity. In other words, no party is superior. My benefit is not superior to the competitor, nor is it the other way around in the eyes of the customer. Hence the word parity, points of parity. Whereas points of difference can go two ways, right? They can be favorable point of difference and unfavorable point of difference. So a favorable point of difference would be when my benefit is superior to the competitor. Hence the word favorable point of difference. Whereas an unfavorable point of difference is when the level of my benefit in the eyes of the customer is inferior or falls short of compared to the competitor's benefit, level of benefit. Hence, unfavorable pod. And then the last points of contention is when, as the name implies, it's contention, right? It's contention. So contention means that there's a disagreement, right? There's not a unanimous agreement. So the contention is between the buyer and the seller. So they're not agreeing on something. So the contention can come in two forms. The seller may say that, oh, this benefit, a particular benefit, is a favorable point of difference, but the buyer may argue that, hey, what you're suggesting and arguing as a favorable point of difference, I think that that's either pop, or even maybe a negative point of difference. See, let me repeat that. So the first possibility of point of contention is when a company argues that this benefit is a favorable pod, but the customer argues that, counters and says that, hey, it's not a favorable pod, but it's a pop or it's a unfavorable pod. So, and then the second possible point of contention is when the company argues that, hey, this benefit is a pop, right? But the customer counters and argues that, hey, it's not pop, but it is a unfavorable pod, right? So that's when there can be two different types of points of contention. So having said that, let's compare the different types of customer value propositions. So here you will see three different types of value propositions: all benefits, favorable pod, and resonating focus. And let's compare these on the first one. What are they made of? What does it consist of? So like I said before, all benefits, it's all benefit customers receive from an offering. So it's the list of all the benefits that the customers will receive from a market offering. It's a list of the benefits. Whereas the favorable pod is all favorable pods relative to the next best alternative. So it's not just all the benefits that a customer will receive, but it's only the favorable pods. Whereas the resonating focus is one or two pods, or sometimes it could be three, depending on the situation, but it's a selective list. It's one or two pods, or it could even be a pop that delivers the greatest value or impact to the customers. So as you can see, going from left to right, it's narrower, it's more detailed, and whereas the all benefits is focused just on the focal company, it's internally focused, whereas the favorable pod is internally focused, but also externally focused by considering competitor information, whereas the resonating focus is internally focused and externally focused. However, it's externally focused in the sense that it includes not only competitor information, but also customer information. So in other words, again, going from left to right, all benefit is just the company. Favorable POD is the company and competitor. Resonating focus is company, competitor, and customer. So that's why resonating focus is the ideal. It is a superior value proposition compared to the former two. Now let's compare these three on the next question in terms of it answers the customer questions of the following. So for all benefits, it answers the question of why should our firm buy your offering, right? I mean, if a buyer, asks this question, why should our firm buy your offering? Then the all benefit type of value proposition will be able to answer that question. Moving on to the favorable pod, the question, it answers the following customer question of why should our firm buy your offering instead of competitors? As you can see, if you compare the all benefit question from the favorable pod question, the favorable pod question has this qualifier at the end instead of competitors. Right? So that's an improved question. So think about it. Put yourself in the shoes of a customer, a buyer. I mean, wouldn't you want to ask, what's so good about your product compared to the competition? What makes your product superior to the competition? As opposed to just saying, why is your product better? So the question that's being asked by the favorable pod is an improvement over the all benefits. And then moving on to the resonating focus is what is most worthwhile for our firm to keep in mind of your market offering, right? So the key word here is what is most worthwhile, or what is the most valuable? What's most impactful? Right? So as you can see, again, going from left to right, it's an improvement. Now, if we compare this on some of the requirements, it requires knowledge of what? Well, like I said before, the all benefit value proposition only requires knowledge of your own market offering, so about your own company. Whereas the favorable POD requires knowledge of not only your market offering, your company, but also the competitor's products. And then the resonating focus, like I said before, you need knowledge and understanding and expertise about not only your market offering and not only the competitor's market offering, but also your customer's knowledge, what the customer desires, what is most impactful to the customer. So how own offering delivers superior value versus the next best alternative offering. So what is your offering that's superior to your next best alternative offering, but then again, that provides the most value, that is most impactful? Some of the pitfalls, the shortcomings that that companies can experience by using different value propositions is for the all benefits, you may fall into the trap of just listing all the benefits, benefit assertion, right? Because you don't have to worry about the competitors. You don't have to worry about how impactful it is to the customers. So you may be just focusing on asserting, laying out just the benefits. Whereas the favorable POD is you may be focusing on just the value presumption. In other words, you may assume that all the benefits have equal amounts of impact and they're all equally valuable to the customers, which probably won't be the case. Whereas the third one, the resonating focus, is that it requires extensive, deep knowledge about the customer. So it requires customer research. Why? Because you need to understand which benefit is not only superior to compared to the competition, but also has the most impact and is most valuable to your customers, which then implies that you need to understand the customer's business model and the needs of the customer, which is not easy to do, right? It requires some market research. Okay, let's look at this framework. This slide shows you different benefits, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. And the question here is, how do I know from these different 8 benefits which ones are the resonating benefits? Which ones should I include in the resonating focus value proposition? So on the x-axis, the horizontal axis, we have performance relative to the next best alternative offering. And then on the vertical axis, we have impact on value, right? Impact on value to the customers. So they both range from low to high, and we have like these 8 different types of benefits. So let me ask you this question. Out of these 8, which pair, we have 4 pairs, which pairs should you include in your resonating focus value proposition? Have you thought about that? Well, the answer should be C and D. Why? Because C and D is high on performance relative to the next best alternative. But not only that, it is very impactful on value. It has high impact on value. So it meets the requirements for the resonating focus value proposition. Because remember, in order to be benefits that it can be included in a resonating focus value proposition, you have to have benefits that are performing relatively high compared to the next best alternative offering, but at the same time, they have to be impactful to the customers, right? They have to be valuable to the customers. And benefits C and D meet those requirements, whereas A and B don't. Why? Because it's high on one and low on the other, just like G and H, which is high on one but low on the other. Whereas E and F don't satisfy both of those conditions. So E and F would be automatically disqualified. So in summary, this is one way to sort of visualize and understand which benefits should be included in a resonating focus value proposition. And just to reiterate, you need to consider the performance level relative to the competitor, the closest competitor. And not only that, but you need to make sure that those benefits provide high impact to your customers. And when you when you can find out what those benefits are, then those would be the benefits that you would want to include in your value proposition and communicate that in a persuasive manner to your customers. Okay, last but not least, you may want to substantiate your customer value proposition by documenting this in a very tangible manner. And this just goes to show you just an example of if you are, let's say, a power company or you have a technological product, and one of the benefits that you're trying to show is that it uses less energy, power reduction through cost savings, then you would want to compare that cost savings, compared to the competition. So the comparative solution would be, I'm not going to go through that, formula, but it's sort of self-explanatory. So that equation would give you the competitor's cost from using a product. And then if I'm a company called Rockwell Automated Solutions, this would be my cost from using my product. And then you take the difference between, because this is assuming that if you were to use my product, you would incur less, cost. So if you take the difference between a competitor's cost and my cost, since the competitor's cost would be higher compared to my cost, you would have a positive number, which would translate into cost savings. And therefore, by doing this, you're able to materialize and document how much a buyer, a customer would be able to experience cost savings from using my product compared to the competition. And that way you'd include this in your value proposition. But again, this is assuming that you've shown that my product is superior to the competitors. But like I said, in order for this to be a resonating focus value proposition, you have to show that cost savings is what's really critical and impactful, and it's valuable to customers. But we're assuming that what customers would not want to, save costs. So that's sort of a universal demand and a need for everybody. You know, who wouldn't want to save money by using a product? So that's sort of assumed in this slide. But this just goes to show you that you may have to document some of these cost savings by showing these calculations to customers to drive home the idea that our product is superior on a tangible level through economic value in this case compared to the competition.